Hi, it's Alvin, and I currently work, live, and invest in the worst housing market, according to the Wall Street Journal, Cape Coral, Florida. So the Wall Street Journal just published an article naming Cape Coral, Florida as the worst housing market. This article has been causing a lot of headway locally here in Cape Coral, and I'm going to be reading the article with you. This is my first reaction to the article itself. I'm going to share with you the investor perspective. I'm going to try to cut through some of the hype that's involved here. And then what's true, I'm going to share with you what's true. My goal is to give you an unbiased view, but I also want to make sure you have your investor hat on and ask the big question. Why is the Wall Street Journal publishing this article? How do they want people to feel? And how should investors react? Should we get excited or should we be fearful? I'll be covering all of that in today's video. Hi, my name is Alvin Taveras. I'm the CEO and broker at Build to Rent. We currently operate in multiple different states and work with about 28 different builders. Our mission is to make buying real estate investing as easy as buying a bond, treasury bill, or other investment vehicle. The way that we accomplish that is we work with developers and we make their housing into investable vehicles. A lot of this comes down to doing a lot of research ahead of time and packaging the right property management team, lender, and insurance. So the point is we're having a lot of questions and inquiries from investors about the best investment markets. And we currently sell in Cape Coral today. We not only sell in Cape Coral, we sell throughout Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and now Alabama. So whenever there's a headline news article like this, I always want to read it myself. And so what I'm going to do now for the first time is I'm going to read the article with you, and we'll go ahead and dive into the details together. So one of the major takeaways from the article is just this cover photo. And this is a very symbolic photo of Cape Coral. So you see the very wide canals. And by the way, Cape Coral has more canals than Venice. So if you're looking for waterfront property, Cape Coral has some of the cheapest. And these are great because these are navigable. You can take these canals directly to the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, however you want to call it. You'll see that a lot of people have boats in their backyard. They have them on a lift. And from their backyard, they can take their boats to restaurants, go island hopping. And one of the benefits about being on the Gulf side is that our water is a lot calmer. If you're over on the east side, those waves are rough because you're on the Atlantic Ocean. Here on the Gulf side, it's a lot calmer. So going island hopping, going to sandbars, going to different restaurants, it's a lot easier to navigate. And we get a lot of people from the Midwest here. In the Midwest, they obviously don't have any oceans, but they have lakes. And so for those people who are used to being on calm water like a lake, doing fishing, traveling, exploring, just enjoying the boat as your backyard, Cape Coral is a phenomenal market for that. The cover photo absolutely captures Cape Coral perfectly. And then again, we have another photograph here of the canals, and it is a major selling point. And here's the thing. Most people don't live on a canal. But what the canals do is they provide a sense of luxury that otherwise would be wildly more expensive to have. If you have a similar lot like this over on the East Coast, you're going to spend $2-3 million to the land itself. Here in Cape Coral, you can get Gulf access lots for a whole lot less than that. And so what it does for the region as a whole is whenever we talk about land costs, land is completely made up. And so it's not a real thing. You didn't have to build the land. You didn't have to do much to the land. The land is already there. So when we talk about speculation, which is what I'm guessing this article is going to go into, is whenever you have increased land value and it's a made up number, that's going to fluctuate a lot more. When you just deal with the improved property, which is the actual cost of building on top of the lot, that number is real. Labor cost is real. Material cost is real. Transporting those goods here is real. The architect, the city planning, all of those are real costs. And so a lot of times we talk about bubbles, we're talking about the land value and how much it shifts. So Cape Coral used to be a much more sleepier town. It used to be more calm, more reserved. It used to be more of a stable market. But in the last couple of years, it's become much more cyclical. And there's a lot of investors and homeowners building their dream homes, building their next investment opportunity here. So it's become a little bit more speculative. So as we look to read the article, they're mentioning the same thing, just the importance of the canal system. They also mention the fact that the median home price has soared nearly 75% in 3 years. Now the average is $420,000, or just shy of $420,000 in 3 years alone. And they're describing the neighborhood as being middle income, retirees, and small investors. I would say that's generally accurate. The one thing that they are missing is that we are getting a lot of people who are moving from other metros. We got a ton of people who leave Miami, come to Cape Coral. A lot of people who leave Orlando, come to Cape Coral. A lot of people who leave Tampa and come to Cape Coral. Cape Coral is a lot more affordable than some of these markets, and I would argue the quality of life is much higher. Now, keep in mind, we don't have professional sports teams. We don't have some of the entertainment factors that they have. But if someone's looking at raising their family, and I always joke that I'm a millennial now, and I've done all the bar hopping, right? I don't need to go to the basketball game. I'm okay. I care more about working, going home, spend time with my family. I care more about the school districts. And so people who move into Cape Coral is actually leaning much more towards younger family. In fact, while I live here in Cape Coral, a lot of the people who have moved out have been more of that older generation, and they've all been replaced by people with young kids, young families with young kids. So the key here is when we get to the point of the price point of 420, that's pretty close to the national average. So if you're at 420K, that's pretty much at the national average. So Cape Coral, Florida is now priced about the average, and you can argue that the quality of life here in Cape Coral is a lot higher than the average. So it's a discount compared to anywhere else you would invest. As an example, the number one destination for people leaving Chicago is Cape Coral. We also have a huge German population. I have no idea why, but we do. And so the point is, people come here for the quality of life. The other thing you want to counteract that with is, okay, you're at the national average. That's okay. That's good. It means you're still middle of the road. And what you're offering as far as quality of life is a lot higher. The major question to ask is, can the local income support a $420,000 house? And that's up for debate. We have seen a lot of large employers move to the area, some of which is Hertz, Chico's, Gartner has a major office here. So we've seen major companies move down here, but have the income risen enough to make 420 affordable? That's up for debate. And so historically, we've seen a lot of money that was created somewhere else move into this market. And that's where your retirees kick in. That's where your investors kick in. That's when your work from home or your entrepreneurs kick in, generally bringing money from another region and bringing in here. But it is really difficult for someone to, on Cape Coral's income, make their way to buy a property that's worth 420. So now the article is going to dive into all of the for sale signs that are popping up. And this is true. This is something that I think we're seeing everywhere. It's just for sale signs going up. And there are a couple of reasons why. I think that a lot of people are now open to moving on, doing something different, but there's a number of challenges here. And keep in mind, when someone says that they want to sell their home, it's very different than someone that has to sell their home. Two very different things. And the question is, how distressed is that person? So as an example, I worked with an investor who had 5 short-term rentals. And he got to the point where he was like, hey, this market's a bit saturated. We all know Airbnbs is a tough business to be in right now. The market's a bit saturated, costs gone up, occupancy is a mixed bag depending on the season. And it's overall becoming very difficult. Well, he was like, let's go ahead and sell them. If I can get the money back, I'll be happy. I would have made some money as a short-term rental, but now I can just get the money back and maybe redeploy it something a little bit safer that requires less work. When we listed the property, we weren't getting the price that we wanted. So he was able to adjust the price down a little bit, but then it got to the point where he didn't have to sell. So at the price point that he needed to be at that it would have sold, he didn't want to go there. So he went ahead and took his properties off the market and is now currently still renting them out as an Airbnb. And this is kind of what we're saying overall, is you might see listings go up, but how many of those are distressed listings? And how many of those are just people who are trying to get out the market and sell and just make a move? But the question is, can you get them to be aggressive enough at a discount to sell their home? And a lot of people are saying no. And so in this case, we had someone who was an investor who would rather just hold on to the property. We have a lot of other people that either own their properties cash or that have 50% equity. If you have a property paid off for, it doesn't really cost you that much to hold on to it. So there's no real need to be super aggressive and sell it for way less than you want to. The other category is people who have a very low interest rate. There are a lot of people, keep in mind that interest rates being this high is a temporary blip. It has not historically been that way. So there are a lot of people that have a 2.7, 3.5, 4% interest rate. And they're looking at it. If I sell this thing, this is my house, and I sell this thing, and I have to go buy another property, like what's my next mortgage payment going to be? And if I'm currently living in a property, that means I'm getting use out of this property. Therefore, I don't have to sell it. I can just keep living in it. So if we keep reading the article, we see that the Cape Coral is the worst housing market in America right now. That is a quote from Jose. I can't say her name, but from Jose, which I don't know Jose. He's a local realtor, which it's fair to say. We can all say this is the worst, that is the worst. That's a personal opinion. I'd like to see the breakdown. I don't know if they go there. But he also says that I don't think we're at the bottom yet. And I want to focus on that part. So we've seen declines, and are we at the bottom? And I would also probably agree with him. If we're slipping, this is not the bottom. But here's the thing. Whenever we use the word crash, which so far this article has not used the word crash. Crash means the bottom has caved out, right? And that's usually more of a lending situation. Because as an investor, we're always looking to buy, right? It's just whether or not we have the ability to buy. And that ability usually comes from the lender or our own capital. So right now, there's a lot of capital out there, a lot of capital sitting on the sideline. In fact, this article right now is probably going to start building up a lot more capital to start getting ready to start acquiring properties in a market like Cape Coral. So there is capital on the sidelines. There is currently lending on the sidelines. In order for the bottom to fall out, you need the capital lending to stop. And at this moment, lenders are still lending freely. They're a little bit tighter on DSCR loans, but overall, they're still lending pretty freely. And I don't see a bottom falling out unless something happens to our financial system. So, but he's right. We're probably not at the bottom. And here's the thing. So when you think about the amount of supply, a lot of the supply is actually new construction coming into the market. Peak permits were in 2021. And so a lot of the homes that we're seeing that are new construction are coming into the market. They're coming in because they were already permitted in 2001. And so here's the thing. Since then, they've been declining. So we've seen a sharp decline in permits since then because the labor costs, material costs, cost of capital have all gone up for the builder, and they can't get a higher resale price. They are not able to transfer those costs over to a buyer, right? Because the buyer also has a higher cost on their end. And buyers right now are just sitting on their hands. They're not playing games. There is buyer demand if prices of buying and owning the home go down, right? If they're cheaper. So affordable housing, they're there. When we look at the market of Cape Coral, we found that a lot of builders were going a little bit more premium. There's a functional housing market, which is your D.R. Hortons, your Lennar, those basic cookie cutter hamster homes, those people cages. Those are the ones that are going to be at a very low price point. And those are moving. Those are selling. Those 300K marks, those are selling. When you're talking about the average being 420 or above, you're usually looking at more of a move-up market. I mean, someone had a home, they want a better home. Or they had a home and now they want their dream home. They're looking to add amenities, they want all these things and everything. That market is dead, it is shot. When we talk about the average price dropping in Cape Coral, a lot of those price drops are geared towards those luxury or move-up home markets. And that's where we're seeing the demand is not there for them. Now, once interest rate adjusts, which they may adjust later on this year, we may start to see buyers and investors come back into the market. So I want to just pause and look at this image right here. And this might be Jose, I have no idea, but this is very typical of who we're talking about in Cape Coral. You have a young male, likely Hispanic, who's likely providing for his family, chasing his dream, being ambitious, right? He's taking a gamble. And he's probably not a major player in the industry. And this is a typical investor, typical builder, typical homeowner of today's Cape Coral. These are ordinary people pursuing their dreams. They're trying to go about it in the smartest, most intelligent way possible. But this person right here is representative and is who we see across the board in Cape Coral. People pursuing their dreams, trying to build their wealth, build a legacy. A lot of times these articles are like met with like glee, because they think that like investors suffering or home builders suffering is a net benefit. They think of everybody as being the boogeyman. And like, no, these are your brothers, these are your sisters, these are your cousins, these are your neighbors that are just trying to improve the lives of themselves and their families. So at this part of the article, they're also mentioning that there's over 12,000 homes listed. And we talked about that. We talked about that listing doesn't mean distress or anything like that. The key is when you look at the foreclosures, they've been flat. Again, when people have paid off properties, they don't have to sell at a discount. People are actively living in their property. They don't have to sell. Now, will some people? Yes. And keep in mind, when we were going up, it was a rapid ascent. Prices went up very quickly. So if we adjust 11, 15, maybe even 20%, that would have just cut off the increase of the last 3 years. So we're going to likely go through this point of equilibrium, but I do see that there's pent up buyer demand and there's a lot of money ready to jump into the market. And of course, Florida, anywhere in Florida has great pools. Here's a picture of they're trying to capture a distressed person in their home and maybe being upset with their finances. And so, these are the people who bought those move up properties, right? These are the people who bought something else a little bit more luxurious, and those buyers aren't there. So they're going to have to either be super patient, decide to hold on to their properties, or sell at a price point that someone else would be excited about. And buyers do have options. Buyers absolutely have options. The other thing that's not being captured here, I do a lot of new construction sales. We are selling new construction cheaper than existing homes. So like the builders we work with, they have to sell their properties. The whole point of building it is to sell it. So when we do these bulk buys, we get bulk discounts for our investors, is because they have to sell it. And the builder is going to undercut any resale buyer out there. And that's a problem they find themselves at, is these guys, maybe this house is like 2,800 square feet. Maybe they're trying to sell it for 420. I'm selling 1,800 square feet homes for 330. So they have to compete with new construction that's going to often undercut their price. And we're able to get a lot of incentives for our investors. We get our investors interest rates as low as 3.75%. We just sold a 1,800 square foot home for $300K, where the average price in the area is $420. So when you have groups like us who are fighting for our investors, we're going to undercut these guys so much. So the investors are going to not go to the MLS. They're not going to go to Zillow. They're going to work with groups like us that can get them these deals that they don't have to go crazy looking for. Anyway, the article goes on and on about the different challenges, and they actually do bring up the job market. And the job market is something that is interesting. People say that there's no job opportunities. They are opportunities, but again, for the amount of people coming in, the city has to do a better job of recruiting some of these major employers. There's a lot of them out here. Obviously, clearly, a lot of people can afford to live here. Some are going to have a harder time than others. I don't know who that person is or who they interviewed. I don't know their personal story. I will say that coming out of Chicago, yeah, incomes are lower than Chicago. Same as New York, same as New Jersey. So there is an adjustment for a lot of people. Again, the key is quality of life versus income, and then somewhere in the middle is going to be the equilibrium. But the point is that average incomes are not as high as some other markets. All right, so what are my thoughts? Is this a hit piece? I would say no. It's fairly accurate reporting of what's happening in Cape Coral. I don't see this as a hit piece. Keep in mind that Cape Coral is a lot cheaper than other markets. So for example, in Sarasota, average price is $517. In Naples, it's $650. In Palm Beach, it's $625. So comparable coastal cities, like in those areas, Cape Coral is a steal. Do I see investors coming in? Yes. Do I see homeowners coming in? Yes. That buyer demand is there. This inventory will be consumed and these prices will rebound. And so keep in mind, Cape Coral will be experiencing growing pains. Current population is about 200,000. It's going to reach about 400,000 in the next couple of years. So it's going to be growing very rapidly. And that means they're going to be bringing city water in, right? That means they're going to be building new parks, building sideways. There will be some destruction. And it has to get paid for some way, which means that there are going to be different taxes levied. We are also a coastal city, which is great for appreciation. You also have to mind the insurance costs. The key is stay away from flood zones, be higher elevation. And if you build new construction, most new construction homes are about 5 to 8 feet above street level. So the question is Cape Coral a great place to invest in? The answer is still yes, with a caveat. You have to understand that in a market like Cape Coral, a lot of the benefits are going to be long-term. So long-term appreciation. I believe Cape Coral will be as expensive as a Sarasota. We're going to get there, right? We're catching up to that market, but it's going to require some patience. We're also adding a lot of inventory to the market now. A lot of apartment complexes are moving in. That brings a lot of doors to neighborhoods. And if you have a single family home, you're competing against those high-end luxury condo buildings. So you have to understand that you're going to be in it for the long run. It is also a great opportunity to buy a property way undervalued. So if the properties already went down 11%, you may be able to get a price that's about another 11%. You may be able to get that future decline today. And if you can cash flow throughout that time period, you're going to do very well. And for a lot of investors who aren't looking to wait it out, I would recommend looking at other markets, more Central Florida, more in the Ocala, the Inverness, that Silver Springs, those markets. Homosassa is another good one. Those are going to be great markets because they're going to have a much lower insurance rate. So, for example, I have a duplex in which I pay $560 per year in insurance, which is obviously crazy low. And it's a much more stable population. Land costs are a lot cheaper, so they're not going to be as volatile. And there's plenty of jobs. Central Florida has some of the lowest unemployment rate in the state. So that's it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you considered buying in Cape Coral? Have you already purchased in Cape Coral? Are you confident that the market's going to improve? Are you fearful now that the market is correcting? Or are you being more optimistic that more deals will come? I want to hear from you, and I'll be answering to each and every one of the comments below. If you have any more questions, you can reach me and my team at buildtorrent.com.